Hi, this is Scott Garbarini, and welcome to this edition of the Line of Scrimmage of what's certainly been a very eventful off-season this year in the NFL, and that continued with a couple of events that happened last week, probably the most notable of which was the tragic and untimely death of Junior Seau, a future Hall of Fame linebacker at the age of 43 from a apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Certainly a startling development, certainly a tragic one, but it's also continues what's been kind of an alarming trend in recent years with former players. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. We had the situation of Dave Duerson, a former safety with the Bears and the Giants, who took his own life in a very similar fashion probably about a year and a half ago. Just about a month before Seau's death, Ray Easterling, a former defensive back who played in the 70s with the Atlanta Falcons, did the same thing. And now, obviously, this is something that the league is going to have to look into and investigate further. This is just too alarming a trend. Obviously, the league has made strides in the issue of player safety, and they've certainly put an emphasis on that. We saw that in when the CBA was passed last summer after the lockout. There was things like padded practices were curtailed, and the off seasons were gotten shorter. And probably the most notable thing, what we saw this past season, was the increase in personal foul penalties and in fines for defensive players, for the helmet-to-helmet contact hits, the roughing the passer, things of that nature, which was certainly the things that needed to be done. That was obvious, but when we really look at that, those are penalties that were protecting the offensive players, the skill players, the quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs. But all those players that I mentioned previously were all guys who played on the defensive side. So, maybe there's a thought here that those guys may be getting overlooked a little bit here. And of course, the other big story that took place last week was the suspensions from the New Orleans Saints bounty scandal were finally announced by the commissioner. Certainly, some interesting developments there as well. Jonathan Vilma, who was one of the more prominent players in this whole thing, got a year suspension, which I think took a lot of people by surprise. There was 3 other players that got suspended as well, which to me was a little bit surprising because there was talk about 25 players or so being involved in this thing, and the fact that only 4 got suspended was kind of interesting, I thought. Now, this is a story we still haven't seen the last of by any means. This is now. The next step is what the union's going to do about this. There's a chance that they could take this to court, maybe a federal court or something like that, and at least, if not get them overturned, it'll at least maybe drag it out for 6 months to a year or whatever. I'm Scott Garbarini. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of The Line of Scrimmage.